Mike Shildt finished a distant third. But, he hasn't had a platform. This was a platform that he was a finalist, which means he was at no worse than the third highest vote getter. So he was, I guess he could have said no, but he was obligated, and he should be there. It's good for him to be out there,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he got, and that's a way too, because he got praise for a job well done, and it was a job well done. And it's a great reflection on him and the work that he did, day to day, not some of the big overview stuff, but day to day, just guiding that team. So he deserved, that respect. And so he was asked a couple of questions, and it was designed to be a brief interview with each of the three candidates. It wasn't supposed to be a lengthy thing, where it's like Bob Costas has someone on the couch.
We're going to sit down and tell us.
Yeah, so
tell us about your childhood.
So he was asked about his time in St. Louis, 3.5 years, what he was most proud of, and I thought it was good. It was heartfelt. I got to be honest. The one thing though is that it's not a big deal. I didn't have a major problem with it, but I did wince a little simply because near the end when he started going into the platitudes, the Cardinals, you carry yourself with dignity and class and all. That's the stuff that make people around the country hate the Cardinals. Now, that's their problem, but Shildt and others just sort of don't care, and they come off as a little sanctimonious anyway. I don't have a major problem with it because I actually thought it was funny in a way, because I could just imagine people on Twitter, the old Deadspin crew, and I hope none.
Yeah. They hated the Cardinals.
Yeah, because of that, right?
Uh-huh.
They would have all like Deadspin would have dedicated, the old Deadspin would have dedicated 20 stories to that one soundbite, right?
Yes, they would have.
And people would have been having hard episodes and maybe doing things in their pants, and just, it just would have set off this mass hysteria. The Cardinals, they take themselves too seriously. We're tired of it.
Yes.
Get over yourself. All right. That was a minor thing. Now, this one, when Ken Rosenthal asked him, in effect, about being fired and how he's doing and what's next and that kind of thing. Number one, I was touched by the fact that he shared to the point where he let the world know that he's still in pain. He's still trying to deal with it. He's still trying to get through it. He's sad. He's not over it yet. I guess you really wouldn't expect him to be over it, right? And that's okay. And I appreciate that he put that out there. I really do. It's not easy. You can sort of do the macho thing or whatever, and you don't reveal what some people would consider to be weakness. I don't at all. When someone tells you exactly what they're going through and how hard it's been for them, it's just an honest answer.
Yeah.
And it shows off a really admirable human quality, right? However, man, the whole God didn't want me there. I got a problem with that. And before you start branding me as an anti-Christian and all this, has nothing to do with that. In fact, Jim Heuer, one of Bernie's greatest hits. So believe it or not, people will be stunned to hear this. I used to attend, and for a few years, like a weekly or biweekly Fellowship of Christian Athletes group.
Okay.
And the guy who ran it was a wonderful man, because he was full of grace and truth, and he loved God as much as anybody, read the Bible as much as anybody, but he would draw the line at some stuff. And I remember we had a big conversation. It's a group of about 8 or 9 of us, some former athletes, whatever, a couple other media people, maybe 10, 12 people. There was a discussion at the table about, what do you think when an athlete, because there was a time that this was just constantly on your TV set after a game. Team loses a tough game. Athlete screws up. Whatever. Team loses. It's God's will. No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. No, it wasn't. And the leader of this group, who's completely, the pastor, completely respected by everybody, right? Mm-hmm. He was asked about this because some people in the group thought, Well, no, it's acceptable to say God's will. Blah, and here's why. And this guy, the guy in charge said, he wouldn't curse, but he basically said it's BS. He says that you're letting yourself off easy, man. That's kind of a cop out, because you're saying that you don't control your own actions, or you can't influence things that you do as part of your job, as part of your life, and you can. And so when you fail, you have to take responsibility for it. Maybe it's not your fault, but strong people actually will say, we didn't win today, and I could have done this better, even though you may not have done anything wrong. And I remember thinking, like, this is a guy who gets it. I mean, there's no one I've ever met who loved God more than this man. But he's just, no, that's wrong. It's not God's will, right? You're taking that out of context, and you're just misrepresenting what that's all about. So when I heard that last night, I really did kind of have a flashback. Look, I do not doubt or question in any way Mike Shildt's Christianity, his love of God, his desire to be consistent in his beliefs. That's all real. But when you've just lost your job, and there's been, there obviously were factors behind it. They just didn't wake up one day and say, let's fire the manager. And by the way, there's been a lot of managers, great managers, who have been fired. Great managers. Mm-hmm. I don't think, I'm sorry, but I really don't think that it was God not wanting him to manage the Cardinals anymore. That's a cop-out to me. But more than that, my opinion doesn't matter in that front. But what it is, more than anything, it doesn't help him. Because if there are people sizing him up, maybe, hey, look, we're probably going to fire our manager at some point, maybe even next season, or the season, like after the season. Hey, Shildt won a lot of games, man. Shildt deserves a second chance. We got to take a look at him. I mean, there'd be at least, maybe there's tiny red flags, but some red flags out there, because you hear guys like, well, wait a minute. It didn't exactly sound there like he's a guy that is going to learn from his mistakes. And all managers who get fired learn from their mistakes. Mike Matheny, to his credit, and I mean that, he looked inward, and he knew he really mishandled some things, and he was determined to be better the next time around. He got comfortable with the fact that he failed on some fronts, and that rather than be arrogant about it or be in denial, it's like, look, if I want to be a better manager, or even a better person in a way, I'm going to work on myself first. So if you're watching that last night and you're like, well, wait a minute, you want to interview any manager. Let's just remove the name Mike Shildt, and you want to know why he lost his job even though he won, and you want to know what went wrong and what he learned from it and what he can do better, and where he knows he made some mistakes. And all humans make mistakes. All managers make mistakes. Great managers and coaches have been fired repeatedly. They want to know what he gained through that experience, through the tough times. They don't want to hear, God didn't want me there anymore. I don't think they do. So he didn't do himself any favors with that. And there's a point in time when you do sit down with teams, right? Of course they're going to ask you about what's important to you personally. And absolutely you can and you should testify about your Christianity and the impact it has on your life. That's a wonderful thing. But when you're talking about why you lost your job, and he certainly played in a role in why he lost his job, he obviously had a lot to do with that. You just can't do the God didn't want me here anymore. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. And it just goes back to when I was, attending those FCA meetings, and the adamant response from a man I have great respect and love for, who in effect, those type of answers, he considered them cop-outs. So, look, somebody's got to say it. So as usual, I'll be the one to say it,
No,
it comes from a good place, though, because I want Mike Shildt to manage again, and he will manage again. But I want him to make sure that He's focusing on the right things in terms of the next job, not in terms of his personal life, in terms of the next job, and getting himself aligned for that. You know, don't raise doubts about yourself and where your head is, or whether you're one of these people that will not point the finger at yourself or accept responsibility on your end for what happened, right?
You have to take responsibility.
You need to own up to some things. I mean,
Right.
and that's true of anyone who loses their job. When I lost my job, and I'll tell you this, right? When I lost my job for the first time ever, and I wasn't sure what was going to come next, and I ended up here, and I'm happy to be here. But the one thing I just said, look, you always got worked up about stuff you couldn't control at that place, and you were sometimes overbearing in that way, and you wouldn't let up, and you probably were an extremely annoying guy to be around at times, and you probably weren't as much fun to work with, or you weren't fun to work with. And I realized that I really could have handled some things better. I took a damn hard look at myself, right? And I recognized my flaws, in particularly how it mattered to that job. Now, without the pandemic, I think that I would have never been put in the position of losing a job, because I was like I always joke, but it's true, salary cap casualty. But I used the time to reflect and basically take ownership of what I could have done better and what I did wrong. And by the time I got here, and I think I'm putting you on the spot now.
Okay.
I think you would agree with this. I'm not saying that I'm like a joy to work with. I'm not saying that.
Except that one day. But then we will forget. No.
No, I've been really laid back, and my whole, one of my operating principles is like, I don't want to stress anybody else out. I don't want to make anyone else feel under duress. It's whatever jobs you have today, in any line of work, they're not easy. I mean, it's a stressed out time. People got a lot of pressure. They're not feeling right. I'm not saying physically. I'm just saying the world's not all back in order yet. And I just said, wherever I go, I'm just going to be entirely different about, the workplace and how I deal with people, and understanding, it's just not worth it to get stressed out over all this little stuff. And it also makes you a very unlikable. It can make you, with certain people, it can make you a very unlikable coworker. And I'm determined, never to be that way. And we all grumble about this or that, but it's minimal. Whatever grumbling I do is minimal. I mean, very minimal. It's not a way that would affect you, or how you do your job, or your comfort here in the studio with me. Mm-hmm. And so my point is, I can say this about Mike Shildt because I just, in my own little way, went through it. And I know how I handled it. And yeah, I'm giving myself a little credit, because I could have gone back and actually been more of a horse's behind, really, if I didn't get control of, whether you want to call it ego or just moods or whatever. I could have been really worse, right? But no, I wasn't going to do that. So, man, I don't care if you're a baseball manager, media personality, whatever you want to, you better look inward, and you better own some things that went into why you were expendable. You better look deep. You got to look at yourself first, right? And so I feel like I'm on solid ground when I can make these observations about Mike Shildt, because I put myself through that test. And that was not an easy time for me, Jim. It really wasn't.
I believe that.
Not an easy time. I had never lost a job. I knew I'd get a job, but I was not cocky about it, and I didn't assume anything. I don't think I really needed to be humbled. I needed to calm down, but nonetheless, it was a humbling time, and that was good for me. Yeah, I come on the air and I'm confident and brash, and I have, loud opinions and all, but that has nothing to do with looking at yourself and taking stock and ownership of yourself when someone tells you you can't work here anymore, for whatever the reason is. So anyway, Shildt shouldn't be doing the God didn't want me to be here. That just sort of takes it out of your hands, doesn't it?
There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I screwed some things up. I'm going to learn from them. There's nothing wrong with that. I that's what I believe.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you up front, I go, I screwed that up. Well, I'll be better next time. Right. That's part of
I learned a lot.
Being human, right?
Right. I learned a lot, right?
Yeah.
You just say that.
Uh-huh.
And he could even have said, I learned a lot. There's some things I could have done better. There's no question about it. I've been taking a hard look at myself, which you got to do. And I tell you what, I'm looking for a chance to talk to people who want to, consider me for a managing job. I can't wait to talk to them about it. Tell them what I've learned. Tell them what I think I can bring to the table, what I can do better. That's the kind of stuff he needs to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
not take it out, and remove all ownership of the firing and just sort of say, well, in effect, it's God's will. No. Sorry. No sale. I only laugh because it's like, because I'm listening to myself and I'm like, all right, big dude, you've made your point. Shut up. I'm laughing at myself, actually. So, but I wonder what people think, but I know what some people think. Oh, Christian bashing. No, I'm not. Not at all.
No.
Not at all. No. Quite to the opposite. Because I am repeating a very meaningful experience, listening to testimony from a great man who shot down that theory. And this is a man of faith like no one I've ever met. He shot down that kind of theory. So that had a pretty big impact on me. Changed the way I looked at things.